Hello, hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Today we're going to be talking about Crona, the last of the Children Meisters, as well as his weapon partner Ragnarok. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? Starting off with the strength score. Yeah, he's not, like, super strong, but he's not super weak either. So he's kind of in a nice middle ground. When you're comparing him to someone like Blackstar, he doesn't do a whole lot of heavy lifting, but that's because Blackstar's around, right? So, we have that. I just don't think he's expressly weak, because in the beginning, Ragnarok is a very big sword. So it's going to take a little bit of strength to be able to wield, and especially wield well, as we see he's not bad with a sword either. So because of that, I'm going to say there's a nice middle ground of 12 to 14. Maybe a little higher right at his peak, but probably not too much higher than 14. Moving into dexterity. Did I miss anything for strength? I think I'm good.
No.
No? Cool. Yeah, moving into dexterity. Crona's a little bit smaller, so from an AC standpoint, he's going to be a little harder to hit. Things of that nature. We also see him sneaking around a couple times throughout the show. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. We should be good. He was Medusa's spy for a little while, so along with that came him having to sneak around. Something like putting a snake in a drink. Your typical rogue stuff, really. I would be surprised if there wasn't a single story, at least, of a rogue putting a snake in a drink. You know? Mm-hmm. That'd be pretty surprising to me.
Has to be at least one.
Leave your stories down below. I'm interested to hear what antics you get on in your games. What'd you say?
Oh no.
I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, so like, we see his dexterity a little bit, and it's not bad. Because of that, I'm gonna go with something like 16 to 18. Right? Moving into Constitution. He takes a lot of hits. From, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. From the time we meet him, he's constantly getting hit by something. Whether it be the main characters, Ragnarok, Medusa, someone. He takes a lot of hits. He's constantly getting hit by something. So because of that, I would say his constitution's pretty high. But you also have to factor in things like things that happened before we knew him, and how he was able to put up with, I already said spoiler alert, but kind of reiterating that point, how he had to put up with like being locked in a room for however long. We have no idea how much time passed. Could have been 10 minutes, probably wasn't 10 minutes, could have been a few days. It was probably a few days. A few days to a week. Like, we have no idea how long or how much time passed.
Mm-hmm.
So just his ability to go through that, put up with it, and then come out on top of it is insane. So because of that, for Constitution, I think I'm going to go pretty close to 20. 18 to 20, I guess, would be the range, if you wanted one of those. Did I miss anything in Dexterity or Constitution? I don't think so.
Nah.
Yeah, nothing super important if there was something. Probably a joke in the script. But nothing important. Moving into Intelligence, that's always the next stat we do.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, I don't have the test episode to go off of, which means I actually have to do my job. I don't appreciate this. But, from what I can tell, he might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's not the dullest either. Especially when you're comparing him to Blackstar. He does a little bit of strategizing, he does a little bit of thinking. He comes up with a few of the ideas, although not a ton. But he is constantly saying things like, I don't know how to deal with that. So that kind of, it's going to be a little bit of a negative thing. He doesn't have any faith in himself, really, is the problem there. And because he doesn't have that faith, he claims he doesn't know how to deal with it. Which is kind of true, but at the same point in time, he seems to do a pretty good job of figuring it out along the way. So, pairing those two things together, I'm going to say his intelligence is not super high, but also not negative. I'm going to go with somewhere around 12, maybe 14. Probably closer to 12 and 13 area, but 14 is possible. Moving into Wisdom. There comes a time when you kind of have to just make a decision and go with it. And Crona has a couple of chances throughout the show and just never really does. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. For instance, when he has to put the snake in the drink, what he could have done instead, had he decided to be on the Academy's side, was go to Lord Death, explain to him what was going on, and say, hey, can you help me with this? Can you give me some sort of protection and just help me out here? I don't want to betray you, but Medusa is Medusa. We all know how that goes.
Yeah.
Never mess with Medusas. You know, they're just not good people.
Always bad.
Mostly because they're not people.
Yeah.
At least from like a mythological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure Medusa was not a person. I forget if it's Gorgon or Demigorgon. I think it's Demigorgon is technically what she was.
Think so.
Which this Medusa's name was Medusa Gorgon. That was her last name.
Oh.
Which
there we go.
so I knew it was no. I knew it was Gorgon. I just don't remember if the technicality if she would be considered a Gorgon or a Demigorgon. Because they're different things. Whatever. Neither here nor there. What was I saying? Something about going to the Lord Death for help.
Yes.
Yeah. He could have done that, and Crona didn't. So he just never really thinks through the situation entirely to see, wait, if I did this, I could get out of the thing I don't want to do and be in like a good situation here. So it's just things like that. I'm not going to really hold that against him too much, given the fact that later on, I already said spoiler alert, but reiterating that point, I have a feeling the show never really went into this, but I have a feeling that Crona was the main force behind strategizing the Medusa fight with Marie. I have a feeling it was collective, sure, but I think the driving force behind it was Crona. That's just an assumption. That could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe the manga goes into that a little more, and I didn't read it, and I'm just a bad fan, whatever you want to say. That's my take on that. So, given the information I know. So for the score, I'm gonna say middle high, 14 to 16, probably. I think is a fair assessment. Moving into charisma, that was very long-winded. Yes. Moving into charisma. Yeah, it's a weird time. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. He does manage to make friends at the Academy, Maka and crew, specifically. Although the crew kind of takes a little while to follow up on Maka. But he does manage to get that. That being said, he's like super timid the entire time. And now that in and of itself isn't enough for me to like justify a bad score. And I still didn't give him a super bad score. Not perfect, but not terrible. But like, when your shyness affects your ability to go up and talk to people at all, your ability to go and make friends, your ability to go and convince people of what you have to say, even your ability to try and intimidate someone back, there's a little weird to think about, but like, he could have done it. He had this giant black thing coming out of his back. That's pretty intimidating, I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
So like, it could have worked, but no, I don't know how to deal with that. That's when it starts to become a drain on your charisma, for the sake of D&D. So because of that, I'm going to say probably somewhere around 12. If you want a range, I would say 10, maybe 14 at the highest for charisma. So right around 12. Just because he makes friends, and he keeps them for the most part. But he's so afraid of moving out of his comfort zone that it stops him from doing a lot of things, especially when it comes to talking to people. So there's that give and take. I think we're good for Crona, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Moving on to Ragnarok. Starting off with Constitution, I want to specify a couple things. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. We should be good. Not Crona. Ragnarok was the Black Blood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to tie into Crona's AC, his Constitution, maybe a little bit as well, things like that. I would be very hesitant to give the Black Blood to players. I'll break it down here in a minute. and maybe you could argue giving it to players at this point, when I do the breakdown, I could understand. I tried to keep that in mind when I did make it, but I would be pretty hesitant because no one else would have it, and then you'd be accused of playing favorites. So keep that in mind. But because Ragnarok kept Crona from getting hit and kind of took all the blows himself, for the melee attacks at least, that's kind of an argument for Ragnarok to have a very high constitution because he was able to take those blows in stride and just keep going with them, right? So for that, I'm going to say 20 because the whole purpose behind that was the Black Blood keeping Crona from being hit and making him super strong. Then we get into the mental stats. This is, okay. So, I broke down Black Star. I'm not going to spoil anything, except I'm going to spoil a few things. So, in a similar way to Black Star, Ragnarok is very much so straightforward, hit things first, ask questions later. Because of that, I'm giving Ragnarok kind of a lower intelligence score of 8. Because even when Ragnarok is small, he's still just like, let's go, and it's not gonna work. So like, 8. Not a very intelligent. What would he be considered? Plasma?
Maybe?
I don't know what you'd call him. Acquaintance.
Yes.
I'll go with acquaintance. I looked at the camera and thought that the shutter was shut, and that we'd made it this far without it recording. So I got real scared for a second. Moving into wisdom, I'm gonna justify the wisdom score with the intelligence score as well, because it's just punch first, ask questions later. That's not a very good way to look at things like, I don't know, getting information or actually winning a fight, because if you don't strategize what you're going to do in a fight, it's not going to go well for you. So I would say 8 to 10, just to give you a little bit of a range there. Charisma. Ragnarok in the beginning could have been very intimidating, and in fact was. I've already made that point. So from that aspect of charisma, it could be good. But from like a talkative, convincing people, we've already established she doesn't do that. So low. I guess technically if you wanted to go more intimidation based, you could have it a little higher. So you could have anywhere from 8 to 14, I would say, at the higher end because of the intimidation factor. Because it's worth quite a bit. Because it's not normal having an acquaintance like that. Moving into the build for Crona. For the race, I would go human, specifically the normal human, +1 to each ability score, because Crona doesn't have anything that's like super high up for the most part. His constitution is pretty high, but aside from that, he's pretty average to maybe slightly below average. So it's anywhere between slightly above to slightly below, which isn't terrible. So a +1 to all of your scores in any generation method would get you about where you needed to be. From there, if you wanted a more conceptual race, go something like Fallen Aasimar would work. Possibly High Elf as well, although Fallen Aasimar I think makes a little more sense. It just works with his style. Because his entire being is like, I'm conflicted and don't know what I'm doing, and that's kind of what the Fallen Aasimar is like. That's just me. Then you go class. You're going to want to go fighter. Specifically, I think it's Great Weapon Fighting for the fighting style, correct?
Yeah.
Because I always get that confused with Great Weapon Master, which is a feat.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same. They're not the same thing. They're different, but the same name. Which is why I get them confused. But then, yeah, you're going to want to go with the Meister class. So, you're going to fill in here and there with the different levels, but at level 7, you're going to take the Scream Resonance, I believe is what it's called, which is essentially what, Chill? Go ahead and read it out for us.
This allows you to send out sound waves that increase your attack power for the next minute.
Okay, so does that specify what it does?
As the sound dissipates, you gain advantage on any melee attacks you make against demons, devils,
and witches.
Mortals, witches.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I believe it's devils, immortals, and witches are the 3 types. If you're confused by that, go back to my Maka video. I went through it all there, and for sake of ease, I didn't go back through it again. because then these videos would be an hour long apiece. So I didn't do that. But yeah, you get advantage on your attack rolls against the devils, immortals, and witches. So then, I believe it's level 15 after that. Oh, you can do that once per long rest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember if you said that or not, but I'm just specifying. Yeah, so at level 15, you're going to take loud scream resonance. Sound, volume.
Yes.
Could have also named it Fortissimo Scream Resonance, but I figured that was too pedantic. I didn't want to do that. And essentially what that's going to do is you're going to keep the same benefits as Scream Resonance. It's going to extend to where on an ally of your choice on their next attack gains advantage, and it's also going to extend the pool of your advantage to Kishin as well. Again, Maka video if you want the breakdown of in D&D what those means. Aside from that, I don't think there's anything else for Crona. So just, is there any other abilities for him?
Abilities, no.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant, because I know there's the Black Blood breakdown still. But, yeah, if you want to fill in some of the other levels, because it was 7 and 15, you got 3, 10, and I believe 17 as well, 17 or 18.
Yeah.
One of the two. Check out a few of my other videos for a few ideas, or, as always, if you have an idea of your own, talk to your DM about it. I'm sure they would be more than willing to maybe help you. I can't promise anything, because I have no idea what the situation is. But yeah, as for the items, I'm done with the character breakdown. As for the items, I would give Black Blood to Crona. Oh, I wouldn't, again, I'd be hesitant to give it to players. You can do this a couple different ways. You can do this with the sort of like barbarian effect, where they add their constitution modifier to their AC, like the unarmored defense. So that's an option. You could do it with something kind of like Sanctuary, where the person makes a, or the attacker, I'm sorry, makes a strength check, or general ability check, depending on what their usage is. So in case of a spell, you'd use that spellcasting modifier ability. Something like that. Against Crona's save DC, which would be 8 plus proficiency plus constitution modifier. And on a failed save, they lose the attack. Kind of like what Sanctuary does, except instead of a wisdom save, it's a different type, depending on what their attack modifier is. Or you could kind of do it something like Crona makes either a constitution or a strength save against incoming damage, kind of like evasion, to where on a success he can half it. And on a fail, he takes normal damage. So those are a couple of your options. Just a few ideas. Again, I would be a little hesitant to give to players explicitly because they might call favoritism, whether it's true or not. So just keep that in mind. But to each his own. So that is all I have for you fine adventurers today. Be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on Stein and Lady Marie. If you can't possibly wait until then, feel free to check out my Discord or come hang out on Twitch. All links to my social media will be down in the description below, so feel free to check those out whenever you'd like. Other than that, I will catch you all later.